He didn't even knock, just held up a spare key and said, "I sold the SUV, Dad. You don't need it anymore." In that one breath, 30 years of rides to practices, midnight ER runs, and winter highway rescues were reduced to a price tag. And to him, I was just a signature waiting to happen. But what he didn't know was that I'd spent months building quiet defenses, paper that speaks, rules that hold, and a plan that would make him face what he'd become. This isn't a revenge tale. It's the day a father chose dignity over disaster, and the moment a son learned consequences come with receipts. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink, because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. The ferry horn drifted across Casco Bay as I woke at 5, the house still holding the night's chill and the faint resin smell of spruce from yesterday's burn. Habit pulled me from the bed before the light broke. I filled the old steel percolator and set it on the stove until it hissed and sighed like a tired engine. Retirement hasn't uncoiled the clock inside me. I still straighten my morning, checks, tools, order, breath. My gray, shingled cape sits 2 streets up from the old port where gulls graffiti the sky and salt wears everything thin. Anna chose the nautical prints in the hall and stitched the blue afghan on the bench I built from a salvaged pew. Her touch is everywhere and nowhere. I keep a soft order to the rooms because tidy edges quiet the echo of an empty house. Out in the driveway, my blue 2011 Ford Expedition waits under a salt-kissed tarp. It's more than a way from here to there. It's winter traction on black ice, a mule for lumber, a tow for the parish trailer, and a midnight ride when a neighbor needs the emergency room and there's no one else to call. There are wool blankets in the back, a first aid kit beside jumper cables, and a shovel that has saved strangers from commercial street snowbanks. I spent a life in 2 trades that both leave marks, firehouse captain by day and shop instructor by the hour. Heat and chisels carved the same story into my hands. You learn how to read a room whether it is full of smoke or full of teenagers leaning over a vise. You learn to measure twice, and you learn that the second measure tells the truth. Community never felt like a slogan. Father Mateo keeps a list of parish families who need a porch fixed before the freeze. The retired crew meets for eggs on Forest Avenue and retells the big ones. Leo Sandoval, who once took apart a planer in my class and somehow put it back together better than new, runs a garage now. On my dining table, I spread the paperwork of a smaller life. A Social Security letter, insurance envelopes, the DMV registration, and a neat manila folder labeled Willow Harbor Trust. Anna made me set it up when her health began to tip, then I tucked it away, a seatbelt you hope you never need. I rest my hand on it sometimes the way I used to rest a hand on her shoulder in church. The garage is where my breath comes even. Chisels hang like instruments, planes gleam in their wooden cradles, and a cedar board waits to become a bench for the parish nursery. When the blade lifts a ribbon of wood and it curls like smoke, time slows. I'm not built for idleness. The Retired Association wants volunteers for winter response, and the pantry asked if I could help with holiday deliveries when the weather turns mean. I circled both on the fridge calendar. I like the feeling of a task pinned to a date. Preparation is another word for dignity up here. I check tire tread with a coin, run the wipers, test the emergency kit, and bag some ice melt. I toss 2 totes of groceries into the expedition for an older couple out on Peaks Island. It's just a dry run before the real storms. On the bookshelf, a framed photo of Tyler in a cap and gown sits beside a picture of us on a pier with a fish that looks bigger every year. Lately, his calls lean toward escrow and interest rates and phrases about optimizing assets. I answer as best I can and try not to hear the ledger beneath the concern. He's 35, hungry, convinced the world would move faster if everyone simply listened to his plan. I met Brooke once at a Sunday cookout. She was polite, kind in the way that starts with a camera angle. She talks about living light and staging a life that fits in a clean square. I make a binder labeled Retirement, House, Vehicle, and Slide in copies of everything that proves who I am to systems that forget quickly. The man at the counter changes and you are just another birth date unless you have your papers. Order steadies me. Someday order might have to protect me. Before the neighborhood kids show up after school to learn a safe rip cut, I hang the expedition keys on the hook by the kitchen door where they've lived since Anna bought the brass tacks that hold the corkboard. Under the hook is a narrow strip of paper in her handwriting. Measure twice. I touch it like a benediction. Fog thins. The stove ticks as it cools. All right, I tell the quiet house, because sometimes a house needs a voice to keep it company. I lock up, finish the last warm inch of coffee, and step onto the porch. Life is smaller now, but it is mine, and for the moment, everything holds. Today. Noon burned bright off Casco Bay, the kitchen window prismatic with water glare when the back door clicked and swung on its tired hinge. Rubber soles crossed the pine floor like a metronome set too fast. I didn't hear a knock, only my own breath counting to 4. Tyler stepped in already looking, not greeting, his eyes moving from the keys on the hook to the open spine of my binder and finally to the manila folder I had left half hidden under mail. He set a tablet on the table and tapped it awake. A spreadsheet bloomed with columns and a calendar tile read, Dad's Life Optimization. He talked in bullets as the screen fed him prompts. Insurance premiums, depreciation, winter risk, opportunity cost. Brooke leaned into the doorway with her phone raised, the angle of a person capturing content. Then the sentence that tilted the room. I've decided we should sell the expedition. He softened it with safety talk and numbers about gas and maintenance, then added that he already had a plan to handle everything so I wouldn't be burdened. He swiped to a marketplace mock-up. There was my blue SUV in my driveway, the price pinned at $6,800, the description using my maintenance. Even the odometer reading was right. Brooke murmured about downsizing for elder safety, the words shaped to be kind on camera. Her lens drifted from the keys to the binder to my face. Tyler pivoted to what he called win-wins. Lower insurance, fewer liabilities, more cash for future grandkids. His hand hovered over the trust folder as if straightening mail were just tidying and not a test. I answered evenly. The SUV is mine, and it stays. He smiled like it was a prelude, not a position. He slid to a list titled Action Items, where Cell Car sat at the top, highlighted like a priority call. He named 10 a.m. tomorrow as the time for keys and title. He mentioned a detailing slot and a pre-buyer inspection already calendared. Consent, in his vocabulary, was a box you check after the cargo is loaded. When they left, the house resettled, but its angles felt wrong by inches. I stood still and let my eyes sweep. The DM Vive envelope that had been square to the table now sat rotated. The binder gaped a finger width wider. The pen lay parallel where I had left it at an angle. I lifted the tarp and brushed dust off the windshield. The VIN strip showed a clean rectangle the size of a phone screen. Documentation masquerading as help is still theft made polite. I called Leo. Pull the maintenance history on my expedition and flag any odd queries on the VIN. He said he would check and keep the truck inside if things turned slippery. The phone buzzed while I stood there, a shared marketplace draft already geotagged to my block. Set to go live tomorrow at 9. The description called it a one-owner vehicle. The irony landed with a thud. I brought the binder back to the table and relabeled tabs with heavier ink. Photocopy slid under clips, title, registration, insurance card, last inspection. I moved the Willow Harbor Trust folder from beneath the mail into the locked drawer Anna asked me to install when her health first wavered. Systems are a belt you tighten before weather. Paper isn't power until it is reachable under stress. I locked the drawer and put the key on the ring with the small flashlight that lives in my pocket year-round. At the sink, I washed a mug I didn't need to wash and watched the rectangle of light crawl across the stove, a candle burned by Anna's photograph. I sat until the heat pooled in my hands. Resolve rose like steam, not flashy, only sure. There would be a lesson taught without shouting. Paper would speak. Time would pace it. The right witnesses would be invited, and the story would not be told by the person with the brightest screen. I took a yellow note and wrote 2 lines. Keys stay. Papers speak. I stuck it inside the binder cover where my eye would catch it in the morning. Then I checked the kitchen door, the back latch, the window over the sink. Locks, like lines in a plan, are not about fear. They are how you agree with yourself about what matters. Outside, the bay exhaled and the gulls chased a trawler. Inside, I returned each object to its home until the room felt aligned again. When the phone chimed with Tyler's calendar invite, pick up, keys and title, 10 a.m., I accepted it. The click was not consent. It was a pin in the map so I would know where to stand when the teaching began. First light iced the porch rail when I stepped outside. Frost traced the grain and my breath hung before the air took it. The tarp lay folded on the hood. The parking space itself was bare. Fresh tire tracks arced into the street and bent toward Commercial Street. I stood there a moment, confirmed rather than surprised. The system had a crack. Someone stepped through. Inside, the hook by the kitchen door was empty. The tin in the junk drawer where I keep the backup key sat an inch askew, too purposeful to be an accident. The phone buzzed. Tyler's text said he had taken the expedition to detailing to maximize price and save me the trouble. 3 tidy phrases posed as kindness. Another ping brought a calendar invite for pre-buyer inspection, Forest Avenue, 9:30 a.m. and key title handoff, 10 a.m. He schedules as if ownership were a time slot, as if my consent were a field that auto-populates. Down the hall, the house felt 1 degree off plumb. I pictured yesterday's clean rectangle on the VIN strip where a phone lens had been. In the glove box, I'd found a loose Velcro patch and a ring where plastic had nested. In the cup holder, a sticker for a tracker brand. I walked to the driveway and brushed road dust from the windshield that wasn't there. What stood instead was the imprint of someone else's plan. My phone chimed again with a public link. The marketplace listing was live at $6,800, geotagged to my block. Photos angled from my driveway, my fence in the background. The caption called it Helping Dad Simplify. Comments stacked in neat rows of approval and objection, none of them in my kitchen. Brooke's story followed, a passenger seat clip labeled Errand Day for Elder Safety. A quick pan of wiper blades in a wash tunnel, a hand resting on keys that were not hers. I called Leo at the garage and kept to the essentials, asking him to check his system for an inspection or detailing under Tyler's number and, if the truck appeared, to pull it into the back bay away from sidewalk eyes. He found an appointment and would be ready. Officer Mina called next. She was on patrol near the waterfront and had fielded a tip about a blue expedition wearing a temporary main tag crooked over permanent plates in a gravel lot behind a boatworks off Commercial Street. She asked if mine was in my possession. I told her it was not. We agreed to meet there. The lot's gravel crunched underfoot. The expedition sat at an angle, a bright yellow wheel clamp gripping the front tire. A clipboard tech from a third-party inspection service waved a badge and said the vehicle was being held at the request of a co-owner, Tyler Ruiz, pending sale verification. I answered in the plain register I used on scene for years. I showed the photo of the title with my name alone and the current registration. The temporary tag rode the plate like a loose bandage, adhesive still fresh. Mina photographed the tag, the clamp, the VIN, and the clipboard. The tech scrolled to an attachment and flashed a scan of a power of attorney dated 2016. I remembered it, a narrow, temporary authority for my knee surgery year that I had revoked afterward by letter. I retrieved the binder tab labeled legal and laid out the revocation, the certified mail receipt to Tyler, and the DMV acknowledgement stamped received. Mina compared dates, nodded, and made the note. The stale POA was null. Using it now read as misrepresentation. She cited the service for holding property on defective authorization and ordered the clamp removed. Meanwhile, the social drumbeat grew louder. Brooke's clip picked up traction in the local feed. Half the comments called it sweet, half told her to leave well enough alone. I took screenshots to fix the record against edits and deletions. I phoned Gabe, the young attorney who helps our retired crew, and laid out the clamp, the stale POA, the tag, and the listing. He said I was handling it correctly and to document rather than dramatize. He advised against confronting Tyler yet, to let the pattern breathe so the remedy would be clean. We moved the expedition to Leo's back bay for safekeeping while the dust settled. I photographed the odometer and interior for baseline. The familiar grooves my ring had worn in the steering wheel felt like proof paper, alone can't say. We slid the door down and turned the latch. Back at the house, I changed the lock on the side door and moved the Willow Harbor Trust folder to the locked drawer Anna insisted I install years ago. I wrote keys don't move. Paper moves on a card and tucked it in my shirt pocket. Precision came inside. At the kitchen table, I sketched a flow on yellow paper. Documents, witnesses, timing. Under witnesses, I wrote 2 names, and under timing, I wrote the hour Tyler had supplied. I texted Mina and Gabe the time and said they were welcome to drop by around then. The binder closed with the weight of a decision. I took a steadying breath and set the morning into sequence. In the binder's vehicle tab, I added a simple log. Date, time, action taken. I printed the listing and circled the price. At the lot with Mina, the temporary tag's torn edge curled in the cold. When the clamp came off, the tire settled square. Mina recorded the incident number. I filed it as soon as I got home. Leo rolled up the service door without fanfare. We eased the truck inside, lights off, door down. I checked the time, paced the kitchen once, and wrote a final note to myself. Document first, respond second, and let the paper carry the weight that anger would only scatter. Stay steady. If you're still watching and the tension has you leaning in, type 1 in the comments. What's about to surface will flip loyalties on their head. A pale band of light lifted over Casco Bay while I set the room. The binder went to the center of the dining table, tabs marked vehicle, legal, evidence. I angled my phone on a small tripod so the lens saw paper and time stamps. A thermos of coffee stood sentry beside 2 pens. I matched the house back to level. Mina texted at 9:40 that she would sweep past in plain clothes. Gabe pinged my phone with a short checklist and said he would sit on mute with his notepad. Across the street, Deacon Paul clipped his hedges in a wool cap. The expedition stayed off stage in Leo's back bay under a written work order. The driveway was empty by design. Today would not be about a vehicle. Today would be about ownership, consent, and paper. At 9:48, a black crossover rolled to the curb. Tyler climbed out with a sleek folio. Brooke lingered at the sidewalk, setting light, phone low, eyes higher. A third man in a windbreaker introduced himself as Rick, a cash buyer, while a mobile notary hovered with a zip bag. Tyler opened with calm and called this morning the execution phase of a plan we had discussed. He laid out a printed form titled Bill of Sale, Family Transfer, already filled with my name, his signature as co-owner, and a line waiting for mine. I slid out the main title, One Owner, Daniel Ruiz. Then registration and insurance card. Finally, the POA revocation stamped by the DMV. I read the dates slowly. I kept my voice even. Brooke raised her phone an inch for documentation. The notary tapped a seal pad. Rick fanned a thick envelope. Tyler set a portable check scanner on the edge of the table. I offered a neutral process. We could drive 10 minutes to the title office, hand everything over a single counter, and accept whatever the clerk told us. Tyler declined. He spoke about a time-sensitive buyer, a locked rate on a replacement vehicle, and my supposed confusion. He pointed to the notary as a fairness guarantee and reached toward the keys hook that held nothing. Mina's phone buzzed. Dispatch had flagged a duplicate title application filed overnight on my VN. A cropped image of my license and a stale POA had been uploaded. Status, under fraud review. She texted me the case number. I announced it calmly and laid down yesterday's incident report number regarding the clamp and temp tag. I said the claim of a co-owner did not match my title. I kept the lens on documents. The notary asked to see original identification and the title itself. I provided both. She studied the dates, then the revocation stamp, then closed her ledger halfway. Rick asked if the truck was on the premises. I answered that it was not. The envelope vanished back into his jacket, and he muttered about preferring no drama deals. Brooke adjusted her framing and delivered a soft focus line about being inspired by families choosing safety and simplicity. I asked Tyler to read the revocation date and the DMV receipt number. He refused and called it legal theater. I summarized the sequence without heat. Clamp, stale, POA, temp tag, duplicate title, attempt. I restated the invitation to the clerk's window. If authority existed, I would listen. If it did not, everyone would go home and stop rehearsing fairness. Mina stepped toward the stoop and greeted Deacon Paul, then me, then the notary. She asked whether the notary was comfortable proceeding given an active fraud review attached to the VEIN. The notary slid her stamp into the bag. Tyler produced an affidavit of gift and said today was formality. I answered with the plainest truth I own. Gifts require givers. Tyler retreated half a step. He would resolve things online and return with updated status. Rick was already backing toward the curb. The notary left. Brooke collected B-roll of goals. I texted Leo that traffic was dispersing and he marked the expedition as hold for owner verification. Gabe received a PDF bundle by email, title, registration, revocation, incident numbers, duplicate title case ID, and a summary I signed with today's date and time. Anger glowed, and I chose procedure. Anna's handwriting on a faded strip of paper under the key hook read, "Measure twice," and my thumb found it. The first counter move held. I called the credit union and placed a fraud alert, then froze my online DMV access. Passwords rotated, two-factor shifted to a hardware key. I logged out of everything and wrote down the new map. Deacon Paul mentioned that neighbors on Nextdoor had started a thread asking about the nice man's blue SUV. I asked him to say nothing and to note times. Witnesses are not only uniforms. The house took back its rhythm as the bay brightened. I returned the binder to center and reset the tripod angle in case tomorrow needed a second chapter. I checked the tripod angle again and confirmed the recording saved locally. Mina's case number went on a sticky note beside the incident report. The house breathed. Outside, goals tilted and the light sharpened. If you're still watching and this hit close to home, leave a 2 below to tell me you're with me. The next turn forces a choice no one can dodge. 10 minutes before opening, I parked in the municipal lot by the DMV on Marginal Way. The binder rode in my tote like steady weight, tabs ready. Breath counted to 4. I set my shoulders. Today had to turn on records, not volume. Mina arrived in plain clothes with the incident number. Gabe texted he was en route. Leo kept the expedition locked in the back bay, and Deacon Paul stayed on our block to note any home activity. 4 corners of a map, each doing what needed doing. Tyler and Brooke glided in with the black crossover as the glass doors slid open. With them came Rick, yesterday's cash buyer, and a different mobile notary. Brooke filmed the doors, posted a countdown sticker. Rick palmed an envelope. Inside, I took a 013. Tyler plucked a 014 and tried to step ahead just to ask a quick question. The floor officer waved him back. When my number flashed, I landed at window 3 with Clerk Harriet, glasses on a chain and a posture that said she had seen every version of Hurry. I stated purpose, title verification for a vehicle connected to a duplicate application overnight. I slid the title, registration, insurance, and the POA revocation with the DMV receipt. Harriet keyed the VIN single owner Daniel Ruiz. Then she opened the duplicate title queue. There it was, an online filing with a cropped image of my license and a stale POA upload. Status, fraud hold, review required. She glanced from me to the line and back to the screen. Tyler leaned toward the window and announced that he was co-owner and that I was confused. He presented a pre-filled bill of sale and an affidavit of gift. Harriet asked whose name was on the existing title. I pointed to the revocation stamp and the receipt number. Harriet stamped my copies received for review and printed a fraud case ID sheet for both parties. The floor officer, Ramon, drifted closer. Rick asked if any sale could be processed today. Harriet said no transactions would occur while the hold was in place. Rick pocketed the envelope. The notary closed her journal, saying she could not notarize documents tied to an active fraud review, then left her card for later. Tyler attempted a side door. He asked whether a duplicate title could be mailed to his address as caregiver. Harriet printed the address on file, my house, and explained that changes required the owner's written request in person. He glanced at Brooke. She stared at the glass and reset her stance. Mina's phone chimed. Dispatch pinged that Adult Protective Services had received an anonymous report about an elder in decline at my address, with car keys withheld by a relative. Caller ID showed Brooke's business line. Mina texted Deacon Paul. He confirmed an APS caseworker and a patrol unit had knocked and that he told them I was at DMV. He gave his contact. Mina requested they hold on scene until she returned. Outside, Brooke went live about elder safety paperwork. Viewers recognized the temp tag series from a recent warning post, and the comments turned, asking why she was broadcasting at a fraud counter. Screenshots captured. Inside, Harriet placed a 30-day administrative lock on my VIN. No title changes without in-person owner verification plus secondary ID. She printed a notice and handed it over. I staged a protective step. Harriet processed a title remark, owner placed hold/pending trust assignment, and printed the application to assign title to trustee for later. Gabe arrived, read the forms, and suggested we also file a UCC one owner's lien for storage and safeguarding at Leo's facility. Harriet confirmed it could be recorded with a supporting affidavit and slid the packet across the counter. Tyler tried one last push. He said the expedition was unsafe for me and that he had family authority. Mina introduced herself, cited the APS call tied to Brooke's number, and reminded him that misreporting can be false reporting. She provided the APS caseworker with the fraud case ID, my location at window 3, and Harriet's direct line. The caseworker agreed to close the field check pending DMV confirmation and a call to my primary care doctor. Deacon Paul texted photos of the APS timeline: arrival, knock, conversation, departure. The thread on Nextdoor was archived. Neighbors posted that I was at DMV working through a title issue. Narrative recentered on the record instead of the feed. Harriet stapled my bundle. Fraud case printout, VEIN lock memo, copy of the revocation, trust assignment application, UCC one-packet checklist, and today's time-stamped receipt. I turned to Tyler and kept my voice even. From now on, any conversation about this vehicle happens at this window with the case file open or through counsel. No porch visits, no side deals, no notaries in my kitchen. Brooke lowered her phone. Rick headed to the lot. Tyler lingered, then turned for the doors. Mina headed out to brief APS in person. Gabe and I stepped into the Cold Bay light. The clash did not end the problem, but it fixed the frame. From here on, the record would hold. Morning opened gray over Casco Bay, a low ceiling that made the water look like slate. I set a fresh pot of coffee to drip and laid the binder beside the stove. Tabs staggered like steps I could climb without looking down. The house smelled faintly of printer ink. Today was not for absorbing blows. It was for turning evidence into shape and shape into shield. I started with the list drafted the night before. I called the fraud division liaison whose name Harriet had circled on the red-striped memo. I gave the fraud case ID, the VIN, and my license number. A keyboard answered. She said the duplicate title request had been rejected, the account marked owner verified, and a formal confirmation letter would be emailed and mailed. The line clicked and a new breath fit inside my ribs. Gabe texted a reminder to file the UCC one owner's lien we had discussed at the counter. I opened the state filing portal, filled in my name as secured party and the expedition's VIN as collateral, then attached photos of the truck in Leo's back bay and a scan of the VIN lock memo. The interface crawled, accepted, and produced a confirmation number. I printed the receipt and slid it behind the evidence tab, then emailed a copy to Gabe and Leo. The credit union called back to confirm receipt of the lien notice and flagged my account against any title-linked loan. A quiet mechanism fell into place. Deacon Paul kept the community thread simple. He posted all secure, owner verified, and left it there. I screenshotted the post and archived the Nextdoor thread. Brooke's live videos disappeared during the morning. Her profile pivoted to soft lifestyle squares. Tyler sent a half-formal text that began with an apology and ended with the word closure. I left it unread and moved it to a folder labeled record. The email from fraud landed just after 10. The letter bore Harriet's name and the DMV seal. It said the duplicate title application was denied and the VIN lock remained in place. I printed 3 copies, one for the binder, one for the trust packet, one for the safe. I set the first copy beside Anna's photo on the shelf. Procedure had won a round, but the ache beneath it stayed human. Mina stopped by off-duty with 2 forms. We completed the trust assignment paperwork naming Leo and Gabe as trustees for storage and legal posture. We walked to the bank so the notary could witness our signatures and seal the page. "Keep the truck where it sits," Mina said. "If anyone asks, the chain of custody is clean." I slid the executed form behind the legal tab. The expedition belonged to a structure of facts. I logged into the DMV portal one final time to confirm the changes. The VIN lock showed active, owner verified, and the contact line read Daniel Ruiz primary. No shared access. I signed out. The kitchen quiet felt earned rather than empty. I put on my jacket and walked down to the pier. The ferry shouldered out into the bay. A lobster boat coughed and settled into its line of work. For the first time in weeks, I felt I could leave the binder at home tomorrow and still stand. Its weight would be history rather than armor. I watched a band of lighter water open between 2 clouds. Back home, I hung the expedition's key on its hook beneath Anna's note. Measure twice. The key stayed where it belonged. The story, not the hardware, had changed. I made a sandwich and ate it at the table. The phone stayed face down. The house breathed the way houses do when no one is testing their doors. I used the quiet to build a clean record. I printed the case log where the fraud case ID appeared and stapled it to the memo. I exported the email headers from the confirmation message. Metadata, stamps, and sequence would speak if asked. On the UCC1 portal, the form asked for debtor and secured party. I completed the fields, wrote the collateral as VIN, make, model, color, and storage location with Leo's address, then submitted. A green banner announced filing accepted. Next, I phoned the credit union and asked for the title services desk. The representative confirmed their lien notice inbox had received the filing. She read back the last 6 of my VIN and the confirmation code. I asked that any attempt to pledge the expedition for a loan trigger a manual review call to me. She added the instruction and sent a follow-up note I printed. When Mina arrived earlier, we reviewed the trust assignment language, storage, no sale without my written instruction, use limited to maintenance and lawful transportation. We checked the title number and printed names, then walked to the bank for the seal. Trust walked beside procedure. I also emailed my insurance agent noting the lock, the trust, and the storage location. They updated the policy and sent a declaration page. I printed a copy for the binder. Before lunch, I wrote a brief chronology from memory. The morning the driveway was empty, the clamp, the lot, the notary, the window, the lock. If this story ever needed telling in a room with bad acoustics, the bones would be clear. The afternoon drifted into its own rhythm. I cleaned the kitchen, scanned the stamped pages to an offline archive, and wrote file names that told their own story. 01_ title, 02_ revocation, 03 fraud hold, 04 VIN lock, 05 UCC1, 06 trust, 07 insurance, 08 letter. I took a short walk around the block, nodding to neighbors who had watched the week without prying. His mother lifted a hand. Back inside, I set the binder on a lower shelf. By evening, the house had a new pitch. I wrote a line at the top of the legal pad, "Paper fights back when it is stacked in the open." Under it, I added 3 bullets. Lock what is yours, witness what is true, thank the people who keep the light steady. I stood at the back step until the cold reached my wrists, breathed, and understood the week had shifted from defense to direction I chose. If you're still watching and want the truth without the sugarcoat, post a 3 in the comments. What happens next decides who stands and who falls. Mina arrived after 9 with a paper folder and her quiet way of making noise unnecessary. We sat at the table while the kettle clicked. She laid out the APS printout, the DMV fraud case ID, and the time-stamped screenshots from my phone. The APS caseworker joined us for a brief debrief. We reviewed the medical baseline my doctor had faxed the night before and the timeline from Monday through the DMV window. The caseworker closed the field check as unsubstantiated and entered Brooks' number as the call source. She thanked us for keeping the steps clean, then left her card and the closure code. An administrative notice arrived by email 20 minutes later. A line in dry language about misuse of welfare checks and corroboration required for future anonymous calls at my address. Mina photographed the notice and filed it to the incident log. "This reduces ambient drama," she said, which is how police talk about strangers and thresholds. I printed a copy for the binder and a second for the safe, the paper equivalent of closing a gate. My banker called from the credit union. Their alert had tripped when someone inquired about a title-backed loan using my VIN. The request came from a device on Tyler's shared family plan. Their system captured IP metadata and flagged it to my file. I thanked her and asked for the notation to require a manual review call to me for any attempt to pledge the expedition. She added it and sent a confirmation email. I printed the message and slid it behind the legal tab. My agent emailed that a fraud note attached to the policy and any change to garaging or drivers would require owner verification in person. Because the truck was stored at Leo's secured shop, the premium would be lowered under a storage in secured shop endorsement. Administrative ink caught up to this reality, which is how bureaucracies heal, slowly but toward the record. Marketplace followed the paper. After my report with documents, the listing was taken down by an admin. Brooks' account received a warning for misrepresenting ownership. The archived comments, half safety, half let him keep it, were already saved under evidence. I closed the tab without reading any more. I have learned that oxygen is a scarce resource. I choose where mine goes. The first mobile notary from the clamp lot sent a short email. She had filed a self-report with the state commission after Mina reminded her about stale POAS. The report attached a paragraph noting Tyler had represented himself as a co-owner. It wasn't a weapon, only a corroboration, and it joined the stack with quiet authority. Rick filed a statement to Mina that he would not proceed with any deal unless the title owner appeared in person at DMV. He wrote that Brooke had framed the sale as family simplification. Tyler's HR department called Gabe asking for a verification letter on the APS outcome. They had received a reference to caregiver PTO. Gabe let me listen on speaker while he confirmed the closure and promised to send the DMV fraud case ID and the APS note. He sounded like a man sanding rough edges, patient and steady. Brooke's sponsors paused. Her public stories turned fog. Mental health break, family first, captions without the hands present. She blocked several neighbors and deleted a comment thread. The screenshots went to evidence, the motive stayed out of the story. One cousin forwarded a Ruiz family text thread. Brooke labeled me paranoid and claimed I was being handled by outsiders. One relative replied with the VIN lock memo and typed, "Let paper talk." The thread went quiet. I set the phone face down. I had wanted a bridge. The day offered a ledger. He waited at the step with no cameras and asked to clear the air. I met him at the screen door with the binder visible on the table. I repeated boundary, DMV window or counsel. He left a folded note on the stoop. I photographed, bagged, and dated it before reading. The note admitted he jumped the gun, blamed Brooks' content deadlines, and asked for a path back. He sketched a family car fund, my name as donor. I filed it under unsolicited proposals and closed the sleeve. Deacon Paul posted a gentle line, "Paper is peaceful." A neighbor offered to install a doorbell camera he had in a box. I accepted and logged the model and serial for chain of custody. The small red ring blinked once and settled into watch. Gabe drafted a cease-and-desist letter forbidding further title actions, false APS reports, or social content depicting my property. He sent it by certified mail to both Tyler and Brooke with copies to their workplaces. Then he visited and we combed old paperwork. In a file from years ago, we found an authorized user permission on a family phone account I had forgotten. I revoked it and changed carriers. The timestamp went into evidence so that device-linked requests would not trace to me. Leo wrote a shop protocol. Vehicles stored for owner require photo ID and an owner verification code. He posted it near the counter. Mina snapped a photo for the case file. Systems were learning from 1 week's mess. I drafted a page I never sent, a version of what I would have told Tyler if he had come alone months earlier. I put the page in the binder under Personal, Do Not Send. Harriet wrote from Window 3. We updated the stale POA slide. Rooting for you. She attached the DMV training deck. The APS caseworker returned a courtesy call to say thank you for being calm with a chaotic process. Mina noted the statute for false reporting. Tyler's HR sought verification. Gabe sent documents. He began a packet. timeline, fraud hold, duplicate title denial, APS closure. The house settled back into rhythm. I cooked chowder, replaced a porch bulb, and reset the hook where Anna's note still hangs. The key rested where it should. The binder moved to the shelf below eye level. I audited auto payments tied to vehicle services, canceled a roadside plan on an old shared card, and opened a new custodial savings under the trust for future maintenance. Receipts slid behind legal. I posted a small sign inside the door that said appointments only. When the bell rang for real, I listened first, then stepped forward. The week ended without spectacle. The clamp was gone, the lock remained. A record that holds, a truck that waits, and a house again. The record holds, steady. I began by listing the damage in 3 columns on a yellow pad: legal, financial, relational. The SUV itself had survived untouched. What hurt was time stolen, trust bent, and a shadow cast across my name. Under legal, I wrote fraud case closed, VIN lock active, cease and desist sent. Under financial, DMV fees, clamps, filings to storage days, pre-trust. Under relational, boundary breaches, misuse of welfare checks, public framing. The VA adjacent clinic had an opening for short-term counseling, so I booked 6 sessions. The intake asked for 1 goal in 1 sentence. I wrote, clarity without cruelty. It was the right scale for a man who had learned that clean paper beats loud rooms and still remembered what it felt like to be a father. Next, I drafted rules of engagement. 1 page, no flourishes, communication through email only, no unannounced visits, any asset talk at the DM-FI with the case file open, no social posts about me or my property. Breaches pause contact for 30 days. I signed and dated it, then slid it into a clear sleeve marked repair. Gabe reviewed the sheet on his lunch break and trimmed a few lawyerly curves into straight lines. He added a signature block for the other party and the phrase, good faith compliance. The compact looked like something that could work in a living room as well as a courtroom. Neutral ground mattered. I asked Deacon Paul if we could use St. Bridget's Parish Hall during open hours. He agreed to sit 2 rooms away. I sent Tyler a single paragraph. Agree to the compact, arrive alone, no recording, 1 hour max. Break a rule, and contact pause is 30 days. The morning of the meet, I trimmed the binder to a thin packet. Fraud closure letter, VIN lock memo, cease and desist copies, nothing else. I set a kitchen timer to 60 minutes and rehearsed 1 line. The past is documented. Today is about choices. He arrived on time, empty hands, no Brooke. I slid the compact across the table and watched him read. When he read the boundary sheet, he asked, "Is this forever?" I answered, "It's for as long as it takes to keep us honest." Before we began the ledger, he said, "Tell me what repair looks like." I said, "Clear steps, written down and kept." When we set the pantry shifts, he asked, "Does showing up matter?" "Showing up is the work," I said. I broke trust, he said, and signed. The hour could begin. I placed 5 dates and 5 bullets on the table, a timeline without heat. He did not contest a single point. I slid a ledger across next, no demand for pain. Specific reimbursement only. DMV fees, clamps, filings, and the storage days before the trust. The total was finite and receipted, payable over 6 months. He proposed automatic transfers. I required a separate repair account with a memo line, family restitution, so intent would not blur into habit. Repair had to reach beyond money. I added a non-cash clause, 6 Saturday mornings at the Seafarer's Pantry. Service would be practice, not penance. He circled dates on a small pad and nodded once, like a man measuring a beam before he cut. We wrote a 2-paragraph statement for the Ruiz family chat. Duplicate title attempt, APS misuse by a third party, fraud hold, and my decision not to press charges. He asked about posting a public apology. I said, repair is measured by who you are at the door, not the feed. He put his phone away without argument. Then he surprised me. While sorting his papers, he had found a 2014 signature loan in my name. Opened when he was 31, paid off late without my knowledge. He placed copies on the table and said he needed to make that right too. I opened a new ledger alongside the first, a separate repayment into savings I missed because I never saw it. I wrote the bank, date, amount, and a schedule. We clarified the safety net. Any help from me moving forward would be in kind only. Groceries for a storm, a ride to a doctor, never cash, never titles, never signatures. I left my will terms unchanged and said service and restitution were for repair, not to buy back percentages. Understood, he said. He agreed to individual counseling and one joint session with me focused on communication rules. Dates went into our calendars. He also said HR had opened a review on caregiver PTO. That part is yours, I told him. He accepted it. We rehearsed doorstep scripts, text first, confirmation reply, daytime only. He repeated them back cleanly. When he asked about the expedition, I said it was in trust and off the table. Any use would require trustee consent and insurance alignment. He thanked me for not selling it in anger. At 60 minutes, the timer chimed. We stood. No hug, a handshake would be too much for too little. We agreed on a check-in after his first pantry shift and first transfer. We confirmed the counseling schedule and I printed the intake form, tucking it behind the repair tab so the dates lived beside the decisions. At St. Bridget's, I chose the chair with my back to a wall. The compact worked as a bridge, short and testable. For the ledger, I attached copies of every receipt so the number could not be argued, and I wrote the payment due date in ink, not pencil. For service, I left space to record hours and supervisors, treating the pantry like a class. When he described HR's review, I took no notes and offered no advice. Consequences were part of learning. Before we stood, we each read the rules again aloud in quiet voices and checked, understood for us today. Back home, I filed the signed compact and the 2014 loan copies, then added a new tab, Repair. The house sounded like itself again. The work had a name now, and it wasn't revenge. If you're still watching and ready for real closure, comment 4 below, because the next part ties every quiet receipt to a louder result. I opened Repair and saw the first transfer land, Memo Family Restitution 1/6, amount matched on schedule. I printed the bank notice, stapled it to the receipt. The pantry wrote, Tyler arrived 7:55, signed in, sorted produce, loaded vans till noon. I filed the image as hour 1 of 6 and moved on. Gabe forwarded HR's outcome, caregiver PTO revoked. Written warning, ethics training. Mina texted a PS closure confirmation. I filed the printout and watched the house stop bracing for footsteps that weren't coming. Brooks' feed stayed quiet. I checked the DMV portal. Active. Owner verified. Insurance showed storage in secured shop and named trustees, a credit posted. I dropped Leo a card and a laminated shop protocol. Deacon Paul's thread faded. A neighbor who once shared Brooks' videos waved with a small smile. I waved back. Tyler kept to a paragraph per topic, no midnight drafts. I answered in daylight. Transfer number 2 posted a week later. Restitution began to feel like cadence rather than crisis. Harriet sent a photo. The stale POA slide updated with my redacted case. A clerk from Kittery emailed thanks to the gentleman whose case helped fix our process. I printed that note. Bureaucracy can learn if you give it something to remember. On the 2014 signature loan, Tyler made a first deposit to a savings account titled Make Right. 2014. I opened a separate saw tab so histories wouldn't bleed. Therapy set 3 questions before any answer. What happened? What is needed? What belongs to me? I wrote them on a sticky note and kept it at the front of the binder. When a message carried heat, the questions cooled it to the next action. Trustees made a calendar. First Saturday runs for pantry bulk, second Wednesday for winter medical runs. Canceled trips would be logged, no movement. On the clear Saturday we drove, the truck was a truck. We returned to the bay and logged mileage. The family chat stayed calm. Replies were short acknowledgments. A relative forwarded Brooks' new handle. Photos were coffee cups and seasonal wreaths. Some rooms you leave and never knock again. The doorbell camera watched deliveries, gulls, a teenager on a bike, a woman walking a stubborn dog. Safety can look like boredom. After small claims talk, I declined. We stood outside. He smiled at the line I'd used. The record holds. He said call if anything shifted. Nothing did. At the parish potluck, I brought chowder. A man thanked me for the chowder. I said Anna taught me and patience was the trick. We talked weather and fairies. Ordinary time returned by increments. Chairs scraped floors, coffee cooled, and no one asked me about titles. After pantry hour 2, the coordinator sent a second verification with the same plain tone, which is how you know truth is present. It doesn't need adjectives. Tyler's photo of the sign-in sheet showed names and times that added up to effort, not performance. Received, I thought, and filed it. As spring neared, I reread my note to revisit the will if transfers completed, hours served, and rules kept. Hope needs a container, not a promise. The calendar square existed to be earned, not granted. I let that be my discipline. A cousin mentioned Brooks' sponsors had gone quiet. There was no public apology, and I didn't need one. Silence in the right register can be civic. The bay kept its name, so did my key hook. I parked the Expedition in Leo's Bay and touched the dash. It felt like a tool in its holster, not a trophy hung for a crowd. At home, I locked the door, hung the key, and stood in quiet. The house did not lean toward trouble anymore. It stood on its own nails. I kept routines visible. The binder moved to the lower shelf where my hand could find it without my eyes announcing it to company. The door sign, appointments only, stayed inside the frame, mostly a private joke that kept me honest about who I let in. Paper remained orderly. Receipts, notes, dates, signatures, all in their lanes. I learned that good order is not a personality. It's a kindness you pay forward to your future self. Tyler's emails kept to the compact. One paragraph asked about pantry scheduling. Another notified a transfer. A third acknowledged the cease and desist limits by their effect rather than argument. I replied with sentences that contained only the next step. We did not solve the past. We kept it documented and faced forward. Transfer 3 posted on the date circled in my calendar. The pantry logged hour 2 with the same steady tone. DMV status remained clear each time I checked. Neighbors waved, then returned to their errands. Systems held, routines returned. I kept notes, receipts ordered, and boundaries visible. At night, I sometimes sat at the table and listened for nothing, which is the best sound a house can make after a season of alarms. The story did not end in a courtroom or a feed. It ended in a ledger that balanced and a door that stayed locked until I turned the key. I flipped to the Harbor Rules insert, paper before pressure, name the rule before feeling. In-kind help, no signatures without counsel, document the door. The page steadies my hand more than any speech ever could. I write a letter to future me, seal it, and label it. Open if tempted to rush. The lines are spare. Speed is cousin to regret. Patience lets dignity breathe. Open the binder before you answer. It slides behind repair like ballast under a small boat. At Leo's shop, we laminate the owner verification code card and hang a small tag on the Expedition key. Tool, not trophy. Leo grins. Policies outlive moods. The truck rests in its bay as if purpose were a parking spot. The trustees and I hold a brief debrief. Pantry runs logged, insurance synced. No exceptions. We'll meet quarterly, not react by text. Rhythm is the point. I return to the elementary school where I used to read on Fridays. I read one chapter about a stubborn dog and a patient kid. The room laughs once, and the librarian snaps a photo for the bulletin board. No tags, no feeds. Deacon Paul invites me to share what steadied me. I keep to 3 words: paper, people, pauses. The room nods and returns to dishes. I cancel 2 just-in-case appointments from the storm and schedule a dawn pier walk with coffee and no phone. Boundaries make room for joy when they hold. Back home, I set a wooden by appointment sign on a small easel near the door. Friends laugh when they see it. I laugh too. The sign is a kind of hospitality with edges. I draft, then delete a message to Brooke. Closure needs no audience. I total the restitution received so far and write 1 word beside the figure. Enough. The seat where decisions happen is mine again. Harriet forwards a statewide memo. The stale POA policy is codified. My redacted case sits in the appendix. The win is simple. Fewer strangers bruised by hurry. Therapy tapers. 2 more sessions, then checkbacks if rules wobble. I copy the line inside the cover. Clarity without cruelty is a shill, not a mood. Skills sit on shelves where we can reach them. I tape a narrow strip inside the junk drawer. No deals at this table without paper. Reaching for a rubber band turns into practice for larger moments. I make a father's inventory and list 5 things I admire in my son. Steadiness with numbers, patience with children, a knack for small engines, a laugh at bad puns, and leaving places cleaner. Repair remembers the whole person. On a card, I draw 2 columns. Will answer daytime emails, attend 1 joint counseling review, approve scheduled pantry runs, watch a game on neutral ground, won't sign quick papers, discuss assets off window, accept night knocks, let apologies become content. The card won't save me, using it might. We load bulk flour for a shelter across town. I drive, Tyler and a volunteer unload. No speeches. A stamped receiving slip goes into use log number 1. On the way back, a woman with a stubborn dog says, "Looks like you're back to Saturdays." Feels good, I answer, and keep walking. I add a sticky note to the will envelope. Revisit April if 6 transfers complete. 6 hours served, rules kept. Hope is a checkpoint, not a carrot. I write Anna a thank you. Measure twice, save me thrice, and tuck a grocery cart inside. Gratitude keeps the neighborhood lit. Gabe sends a tidy list labeled, "If the waters stir again." Call me, print the last ledger, go to the window. I pin it in my inbox. Plans are ramps. Tyler emails 1 sentence. I'm keeping the compact and appreciate the chance to repair. I reply, keep the pace. The pier walk becomes a promise I can keep. Coffee, air, no phone. I count the pilings and gulls count me back. Quiet is currency. The doorway sign does its job. Friends pause, smile, and step in. We talk about pepper plants and Sunday's game. The drawer strip trains reflex. My hand pauses over the tape and remembers. Paper tells my future self the truth. I close the drawer and feel a small victory click. On slow days, I reread the father's inventory. 5 lines and a picture of the boy I raised. He failed me. He is still mine. Repair grows inside that honesty. Policy learned my name and then forgot it. Somewhere a clerk takes 1 more minute and a stranger's day bends towards safety. Therapy ends on schedule, 2 sessions, then checkbacks if needed. I keep the will's sticky note. April will come, the square waits. Anna's note gets a reply. Gratitude like short distances. Gabe's list stays. Tyler writes, I'm keeping the compact. I answer, keep the pace. At dusk, I hang the key, set the binder one shelf down, and stand in a house that is simply a house. The lesson holds, rules before feelings, service before show, peace before speed.